We are Heather and Paul Christie.
And for over 12 years, we've worked with executives and entrepreneurs to accelerate change in every aspect of their business.
Because we are in the fastest paced business environment that anyone has ever seen before.
So join us for the Evolve to Win show.
Thanks for tuning in to another Evolve to Win show with Paul and Heather. And as you can see, we have Theo Etzel with us today rather than Paul. So Theo, welcome. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Heather. I appreciate that.
Well, listeners, you are in for a huge treat today because Theo is going to talk to us about his progression in business, everywhere from going from the hospitality industry into becoming CEO and shareholder of Conditioned Air. They went from 27 employees to 350 employees. He's going to talk to us about how he did that, including a recapitalization.
Yes.
And the bonus plan is he's going to talk to us a little bit too about his succession planning and how he's preparing the organization for the change in leadership that's going to be right on the heels of this show. So Theo, so happy you're here with us today. Now,
thank you very much.
The other thing I have to kick off as part of your introduction is
Yes.
your book.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes.
So I've just picked up a copy of your book and I can't wait to dive into it. And the title of your book just had me completely hooked. Invest Your Heartbeats Wisely.
Correct.
Okay. Can you start off with just a brief overview of what is this book about for you and how did you get on that track?
This book is really sort of a compilation of life lessons for me through experience and also through mentoring. The title actually is derived from something my mother taught me, who was a Depression era child and child through World War II. And her comment to me as I grew up, and my father was the same Depression era and World War II vet, but her comments to me were that money equals heartbeats. And what she meant by that was when you go to work, you're going to trade you have a finite number of heartbeats on this earth. You're going to trade some of those heartbeats to earn a paycheck. And when you turn around to spend that money, it's not just dollar bills that you're about to put on the counter. It's actually a piece of you that you have given up in order to have those. So whatever you're about to buy or whatever you're about to trade for, make sure it's worth the heartbeats you gave up.
Wow.
And so I took that concept and I've repeated that concept to all our employees and my wife Kim's and my children and everything as a philosophy, right? But from a leadership standpoint, I wanted to write something that took that concept and said, as a leader, where do leaders best invest their heartbeats in the organization?
Oh, powerful. Powerful.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you have a limited number of heartbeats to invest in that.
Yes.
And where is that best used?
Yes.
And, some people equate it to time. You have limited time and everybody has the same amount of time in the day. But we all have a certain number of heartbeats that we're given. We don't know that number.
We don't know it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, it makes your invested heartbeats valuable.
Powerful. All right. I can't wait to read it and I'll give a little review on that too.
Okay.
So take us back if you would. I always find it really interesting to learn how people get into the business that they find and they get into and develop. You've had such an incredibly successful career with Conditioned Air, but you came out of hospitality prior to that,
Correct.
which is almost the same, but with your philosophy,
Correct.
It actually is. So share with
Correct.
us a little bit how that journey evolved for you.
So right out of college, I went to Stetson University and majored in economics and finance. And out of that, I worked for Days Inns of America and did real estate development for them. So I traveled around the country, around Florida first, and then around the country and secured hotel sites for us to develop hotels with. But first I learned all the aspects of the hospitality business. And if you boil that all down to truly sort of a nutshell of the hospitality business, it's making people feel comfortable, right, wherever they are, and greeting them properly and respecting them and then treating them right. And so I think that's a pretty universal way to go through society.
Mm-hmm.
So it's applicable to many businesses because people do business with people.
Right.
So going from that through the evolution of Days Inns and what they did by going public and then changing philosophies of real estate ownership, and I helped sell hotels at that point, and then basically that chapter was done.
Okay.
My
so you
wife
were
and
with them
I was
through
with them
through the time they went public.
Yes,
Got it.
through the
Okay,
time they went
that's
public, and then
fun.
they started going private again. Yes,
Okay.
so we went through the IPO of that and everything. So that was a very learning experience, and I was in my early 20s when we did that. So I could be a sponge and see what happened during this transition and during all these changes.
Mm-hmm.
Since that, right after that, I had a little time to look around and do some things. We were living in Atlanta at that time, and we bought an area franchise for Ben & Jerry's ice cream stores.
Oh, you did?
We did.
Okay.
And so we developed several of those. But as we were in the midst of doing this, the company came and said, we can't produce enough ice cream right now, so no more development.
Okay. And so at this stage, are you a master franchisor?
Or a franchisee.
You were a franchisee, and you had multiple locations.
We had 2 locations open and a third working on, and they basically said, yeah, we'll give you your money back on your master because we're not going to do any more.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
So honorable on one side,
mm-hmm.
Not successful business plan
Change
on the
of plans.
other because change of plans,
Yeah.
right? So I went back into the real estate development business, but this time with Habitat for Humanity, and help them purchase land and build homes and do that along with the stores. And then we sold the stores.
Got it.
And
so let me go back to, I want to just grab a couple of lessons from each of these pieces of your career, because I think they were, each of them so powerful. First things first, at Days Inn, what would you say was your biggest lesson in leadership or business for that matter, in that very first position that you had at Days Inn?
One of the things was I worked for a gentleman that was extremely savvy in deal making and business,
mm-hmm.
and he taught me 2 expressions, I guess, that I have always maintained.
Okay.
And I think they're very, very important. And that is, the first one is time kills all deals.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. So
when
you have a decision to make, whatever your deal is, whether it's a decision on an employee or a decision on an opportunity or a decision on at any juncture, when there's a major decision, sitting back and not doing anything, that decision, that deal potential will go away.
All right. So that's really powerful. I've heard time kills all deals for certain, but I think of that more in the deal making scenario, right? In real
Correct.
Estate and other
Absolutely.
Contractual relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're talking about even a larger scale decisions in general, even with employees. If you don't act, you've essentially decided not to act. That's your decision. And that
Correct.
just doesn't work.
Usually disaster still happens in those things. So
Powerful.
Time kills all deals.
Okay.
And the other thing, the sort of flip side corollary to that is he used to tell me not to ever drive in front of my headlights. And with that, you have to be able to make decisions based on the road that you can see, and don't get too far ahead of yourself.
Okay. I've never heard that one before, and I'm so glad I asked this question, because that is really, really good.
Yeah.
Don't drive in front of your headlights. So,
right. So, going down and think about it, right? Mental image.
Yeah.
Dark road at night, headlights only go so far.
Yeah.
And you decide to speed up,
mm-hmm.
but you don't know that there's a curve just on the other side of what your headlights can see.
Yeah.
And so you may end up in a big, bad disaster. So know your limitations, know where there's some safety
mm-hmm.
there. Not saying that you have to be 100% sure, because
mm-hmm.
if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in business, or if you're a leader, truthfully, you're never exactly 100% sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the wisdom and judgment comes into what's your tolerance for knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
can I make a decision based on 70%? Can someone make a decision on 60%? Can someone make a decision on 50% of the information?
Mm-hmm.
So know your limitations and don't start shooting from the hip and driving too fast.
Yeah. So
without reading, knowing the street signs.
yeah. And I think it's a powerful message because there is this really delicate balance between strategic thinking and operational action, right? And of course, when we do strategic planning these days, long-term planning is about 3 years, right? When you're really getting, because the world is changing so fast.
Correct.
3 years is already a stretch.
In school, they would say, please map your 10-year plan and your 5-year plan and your 10-year plan. Where do you see yourself in that time frame?
Uh-huh.
I always thought back then too, it was like, okay, this is a stretch.
Yeah. And it was a stretch back then, but it's just not
but
even possible today.
Today? No way.
If you're planning out 10 years, you're probably way undershooting what's possible, right? But yeah,
things
so
change so fast now.
they do. Things are coming at us so quickly, which makes business so incredibly fun, right? If you can,
you
can manage the change.
It's correct, right?
Yeah.
And that's and I would interject here that's everybody says people most people hate change. I'm not sure I agree that it's change that they don't like, but currently what I do find is the anxiety comes from the speed of change.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you get somebody comfortable in, I don't care if it's a computer program or in a way of doing something or a way of interacting with customers, it's not too long down the road that you find the market's changed, the customer interaction, the way they want to interact has changed. We have to change with that.
Mm-hmm.
A computer program has changed. We have to upgrade. We have to do something different. It's the speed at which that comes.
Mm-hmm.
So the comfort level is never really achieved before you bump somebody to another one. And so it's a constant learning process that they're going through. And that can be stressful.
Absolutely. I was just talking
stressful for me. So, it's stressful for everybody, really.
Yeah. I was just talking with a client yesterday where their big challenge, they're about a $300 million company. And their big challenge is they're moving and growing so quickly, which I know you can relate to. What's happening is they need to automate a number of the areas of their business. However, the systems aren't in place right now at the level they need to be because, of course, they're growing so quickly that you've got to constantly be going back in and upping the systems and the procedures to be able to match what's happening today.
Correct.
And yet, so the minute that they finally get the procedures out there, okay, now we're ready for automation. And then by the time you're automating, they're about obsolete, right? So that's how quickly we're moving these days.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the other hard part about that is at certain times you have to upgrade people.
Oh, yes.
Right. That's one of the hardest things to do as a leader. It's very easy to let somebody go that has broken a core value of your company.
Mm-hmm.
If, for us, and for, I would think most companies, if you lie, cheat, steal, pretty much going to be dismissed, but you knew that going into it because we talk about all these things that we stand for. Mm-hmm. And so if you violate that and that trust level is gone, then no need to have you around. That doesn't work with us.
Yes.
Hardest, though, and the hardest is a loyal employee who has grown with you and taken you from A to B in some department, say a department manager, and has gotten you to this next level, but now can't get from this level to the next level. Mm-hmm. And those are tough because they've done nothing wrong. They're very loyal, but they're now a limit to the growth of the company because they can't grow themselves into the next level. Those are always the hardest ones.
You make me think of John Maxwell's leadership lid, right? Where the organization can never outgrow its leadership.
Correct.
So you have to make those really tough leadership decisions. How often when you're in that position, do you find a way to take that employee and put them somewhere else in the company? I know that's a challenge because usually that looks like a demotion.
Correct.
But have you had that work before where you've been able to hang on to the loyal employee but put the right person in for your growth Have
Yes.
we done that?
Yes, we have been able to do that. And we've been in situations where we cannot do that,
Okay.
right? Have not been able to do that and simply just had to make a
Mhm.
change.
Wow.
And
How-
those are
like-
the tougher conversations. They're not, there's nothing fun. I mean, I certainly don't wake up in the morning saying, wow, it'd be nice to let somebody go today.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think many leaders want to do that.
No,
That's
no one
not
I
the
know.
goal. Right?
But
That's not
I
the goal.
really do think that this is a powerful conversation for those of you who are listening who are either in that place right now where you know that to get to the next level, you need to bring in new talent. Use this conversation to maybe give you that little bit of a push to make that decision.
Right. And I think and there's a chapter in my book that I call the ostrich complex. Mm. And I've certainly been guilty of this, especially starting out at Conditioned Air and working through the existing employees and trying to make things work. The ostrich complex is basically where a leader goes back to the time kills all deals, but this is where a leader kind of puts his head down and says, well, if I'm having a problem with Heather, let's try to, well, Heather, just keep trying to improve, keep working hard, and let's get you there, and we'll just push the can, kick the can down the road, and you don't ever really face the problem.
Yeah.
And when you do that, the problem grows. The
Big
problem
time.
grows. It does not cure itself, and it does not go away. And as a matter of fact, can be very, very disastrous for the organization because it tells other employees you won't deal with a hard thing. And how many times, I would ask this of people that are watching and listening, if you've been in that position and you finally make the decision, Heather's got to go, and you say, Heather, doesn't work, we've got to let you go. How many times do other people come up to you at that point and say, it's about time. It's
about time.
Right? We all knew it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And you're the last to act. So as difficult as confrontation can be, it has to be a part of the structure of the and process in the company for leaders at any level, so top to mid-level, wherever you are in that chain. It has to be addressed and dealt with.
Has to be woven into the fabric of the culture.
The culture,
right?
absolutely.
Because you think about this. I've seen it happen time and time again where you have somebody where their style is just not a style where they're comfortable with that direct confrontation, so they do the ostrich thing.
Right.
And the impact that has on the top performers is just never worth it.
No.
Because a top performer doesn't want to deal with someone who's not pulling their weight, and you just keep allowing that. So that I am totally with you on that one.
So that and negative always outweighs positive. Negative person will always outweigh the positive person. How many times does someone say, even at a clerical level, right, the support administrative level or something? I mean, how often do you hear people go, oh, wow, good thing the printer printed again, and smile about it? No, never. Because that person's doing their job, they're doing what they do, they're happy doing what they do, but they're quiet. But keep an ear out for somebody that says, that printer's just the oldest thing, and they won't invest in it. It slows me down. I don't understand how we can get things done around here, and they complain, and they're vocal about it. So if you have a negative person, and can be at any level, if you have a negative person and you can't turn that person around quickly, they have to go. Make
that decision.
Absolutely.
Time kills all deals.
Yep, because they will infect other people.
Totally agree with you there.
Right.
All right, I'm going to bring you back to Ben & Jerry's in this master franchisee situation you had. What was the single biggest lesson you learned during that part of your career?
It was that was a tougher time for us because financially it certainly wasn't lucrative at that point.
Okay, right, because you're early in, you've just invested.
Right. So we're bootstrapping all this. We have some investors that have invested in the individual areas and things like that. But we're trying to get this off the ground, and as you can imagine, in a market as large as Atlanta, you have to have a number of stores up and running to gain any scale.
Yes.
Right, economies of scale or advertising scale, things like that. So I would tell you that one of the things that I learned was obviously that something that was completely out of my control and that was unforeseen totally affected our path in life on that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a person of deep faith, and I think the Lord gives you lessons and allows you to have lessons to profit from and learn from and do that. And in again, in some of the writing, I talk about sort of a philosophy I have that God doesn't really give us a big windshield to see the future, but he gives us a great rear view mirror if you'll just stop and pay attention a little bit and look at it and go, okay, Lord, I felt really humbled back here and I didn't understand why I was in this situation and why I was going through it. But as I've looked back now, having just celebrated my 60th birthday and looking back on some career things and life lessons, they're all stepping stones. And they can be used as bridges and stepping stones and important lessons for that. To be used in the future. And certainly everything that I have looked at and said, okay, well, there was kind of a landing pad and I wasn't quite sure why I was going through that at the time. They all layer on each other to where I am today. And, if you ask me, would I go back and trade those experiences? I'd probably say, yeah. Some of those cases, I'd come up and say, maybe we could do this in an alternate way. But in reality, it's made me a better person through life, and also empathetic to people that are also going through this, because you do realize, maybe not when you're going through the storm sometimes, but whatever that storm is, there are other people going through that storm.
Yes.
They're walking that walk. And sometimes if you go ahead of them, you can be that answered prayer or that miracle to that person when they need it as they're going through that same storm.
Yes. Yes. And looking for those opportunities, I think, is also, a great perspective to have, is to really seek those opportunities to be that help or that guide for someone.
Right.
Because you're right, when you're going through it, and Lord knows we've been through it too, it's consuming, right? It's scary, and
Correct.
You don't really know why it's going on, what you did to cause it.
Why that long?
Or why that long? Why
am I in it this
still
long?
happening? So I very much appreciate that, especially having myself been in that master franchisee relationship with 52 counties in the state of Florida in 2008, 2009, in just one of the best of times.
Yes, exactly. So from that point, though, I had hospitality experience, I had development experience. So from a standpoint of expansion and looking. And I also had experience going through an organization that went public, and I watched some of the internal silos and little fiefdoms that were formed within the Days Inn organization at the time of going through this big transition. And I watched some of the fallout from that. And so all those kind of got tucked away, which is a good thing, because I was able to then take that, and through the Ben & Jerry's side, an actual retailing side, right? So some marketing things and some event things, and just different concept of how to deal with consumers. And if anybody hasn't ever been in the consumer facing or interaction, either as a food server or in some form or fashion of that, I urge you to go try that, because you will learn a whole lot about human nature, even with an ice cream cone. So how people are emotional about that. And,
ice cream in particular. So let's face it, right? You don't want to get that wrong.
You don't get it wrong. And so having all those, in 1995, actually in 1993, an investor group purchased conditioned air. We're living in Atlanta, and I don't know anything about conditioned air.
Okay.
But an investor group purchased that. One of the investors in that group in a minority position was my father-in-law.
Okay.
That he lives on the East Coast. They live on the East Coast. And so I didn't know much about it, didn't know anything about it really, and everything. But the leader that they had here from that investor group turned out not to be so great.
Okay.
And so he was being removed, and they are all out of town silent investors. And so they needed somebody that sort of could lead and grow people and had entrepreneurial talents and people skills and gain trust and all that. Having never been in the air conditioning business, but having been in business, he approached me and said, would you be interested in doing this? And we prayed a lot about that because we had children, and we were very happy in the Roswell area, actually up in North Atlanta. And so we decided to take the plunge and move down. And so in 95, showed up down here with 27 people, and I had to work on gaining trust from a young guy that had never been in the AC business. And now I'm coming in to lead the group.
And how long had that company been around? So how many years did you have tenure employees? So
we had tenured employees. Well, let me give you a for instance.
Okay.
Let me give you a for instance. We still to this day have an employee who in July will celebrate his 50th anniversary with us.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
In February, we just held a large retirement party for a gentleman who'd been with us 40 years, and he was 80 years old.
Oh my goodness.
So we have actually long-term employees, some that are still there that are in their 40 years plus with us, 30 years plus with us, and a lot in their 20-year plus. Okay. So for me, I'm I would be one of the younger guys in that seniority level of the old crowd. But and I have to say the guys that had been there a long time, the best thing that they did for me was give me a chance.
Well, and that can't have been easy coming in. You're a young guy coming in. You don't know the air conditioning business.
Right.
And you've got people who really know that business wondering why they didn't get tapped to be the CEO, the president.
Right.
And so how did you do it? How did you, from a practical level, get them to trust you?
So that just goes to what I think is part of leaders' absolute responsibility, and that is you have to be a person of integrity. And the only way you build trust, in my opinion, my style is one of servant leadership, and if you look at it on a practical side, it would be coaching of other leaders, but servant leadership, where I'm there to serve those people directly under me. And instill that as a culture throughout the company. Right? So we can talk about that in addition. But for me, it was, if I said I was going to do something, then I did it. And if I made a mistake, I admitted it. And you have to have, people think if you exhibit humbleness, you're a doormat. And that's not true. It takes a lot of strength and inner commitment and confidence to be a humble person. Because the first thing I wanted to do was give credit to the team. And I would tell you that today. Leaders, you don't go it alone. You want to go fly solo, go ahead. But if you really want to build an organization and you really want to build up a team, you have to have people that do things better than you do.
Yes.
And you have to raise that whole bar. And you only get that by getting great people on your team, equipping them and allowing them to go do what they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So there's an accountability and responsibility, and those have to go together. You can never give someone accountability without the responsibility to affect what they do. And if you give someone responsibility but don't hold them accountable, everybody else knows it.
Yes.
And so they go hand in hand. And so I just had to work, and it took about a year.
Okay.
It took about a year because they'd had a bad experience with someone, and now here's a new guy in town, and is this just more of the same, or is this going to be different? And I was able to prove to them, and it really is, it's a proof. It's, people don't usually extend trust, especially if they've been burned before. They don't extend that trust. So it was an ability to prove to them that I was of my word, and I had their best interest at heart to serve customers. I mean, ultimately, we have to serve the customer. So.
And, I think like for you to say it took a year to really acknowledge that it was a year before you really felt like you were gaining that trust. So a big piece of this too is the consistency, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So integrity is not something you can do sometimes. It's all around. And one of the interesting things is integrity, not just in the big things that people see, it's integrity in the smallest little thing that no one even is aware of, because when you get yourself in that habit and you're so consistent with it, that's really what's required. And I totally agree with you. That's the foundation for trust.
It is. And leaders are always on stage. They're always on stage. As a matter of fact, when I go to the office, as I grab the handle of the door, I say to myself, showtime. And showtime just tells me, be on your best. Walk in positive, walk in, saying hello to people, good morning to folks, thanking them for being there. Thank you for doing what you do.
Whatever you've got going on otherwise.
Correct.
Yeah.
You have to leave that on the sidewalk. I also subscribe to the fact that if you can't get rid of whatever it is that's bothering you that day, stay away. Don't go pollute the office. Stay away. Take a mental health day, whatever you want to call it, but go focus on whatever it is that's too big for you to deal with. Go deal with it. Go do what you can to remove that obstacle from your life or from your ability to go in and be good. And leaders, you can complain. Peer groups are great because you're able to share stories and things like that. So you can complain peer to peer or same level to same level, or a very trusted confidant in the top tier or whatever your level is, but you can't complain down. Because if I walk in going, oh, I don't believe we lost that deal. I can't believe that. I can't believe they fired us. And I walk past the receptionist. Have I given her a real strong boost of confidence that the company is in good shape? No, I've just rocked her world, because now she's thinking, or he's thinking, uh-oh, this spells bad. Doesn't sound good for the company.
And then that goes viral.
Of course, the grapevine is an active thing.
Yes.
And can be used for good and bad, but you have to watch the bad. But that's on you not to ever do things that are destructive in that way, even just sort of, absent-mindedly. You have to be in that. And that's, that's part of that's on the leader.
Yeah. And I love your concept when you walk through that door, showtime. It's like the curtains are opening and you're getting on stage. And on stage, in a way, we call it dynamic adaptation, right? Okay. That's our theory that we teach. And it's all about recognizing that you're going to walk into whatever the environment happens to be, and you have to be willing to and able to adapt whatever you need to really be successful in the environment. So in the event that you're in a bad place, you've got to figure out how to adapt yourself and get yourself into the right space to lead.
Correct.
Because if you don't do that, you're right. You're going to lead by example. Guarantee it. What example do you want to be? Right?
People watch. You are always on stage. And when I say showtime, I don't mean to be a fake person. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you get in the mindset that you are now,
you're on.
Everybody's looking at you. They're watching every decision you make. They're judging every decision you make. They're watching you say, hey, don't steal, and then listening to you look at a piece of paper and say, oh, well, if we code it this way, we can probably deduct that. So we'll probably get an extra deduction. So just cheat the government that way. Incongruent.
Correct.
Right? So they're watching, they're going, well, why can't I take some supplies home then? Right. So, and I can't go into the supply closet and walk out with stuff and take it home either.
Yeah.
So it applies to everybody.
So I think
Me too.
And I think it's really important that you make that point, especially this concept of you're always on and it's showtime. So we're not talking about manipulation. We're not talking about pretending. We're talking about getting yourself in the right space because you know that's what's needed
Correct.
to be the leader in this environment. And it's because you care enough about the people who you surround yourself with that
Right.
you need to be that powerful influence. So it's like being willing to and emotionally intelligent enough to set aside whatever's going on.
Right.
And just, literally put that aside, and I'll deal with that when I have the time, but I'm on right now.
Correct.
And you give all your energy. And part of it, I think, Theo, is just about being present, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, how many people walk into the office and they're just in go mode and they're in their rote routine and they're on autopilot and they don't
Right.
even know how they got to work because they can't remember what route they took because they're just in their head. It's like, okay, we're on.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know
like that.
you all have spoken about the need to control and also be in control of emotions
Mm-hmm.
at work. And you can't just be just a huge emotional roller coaster up
Yeah.
and down, up and down, up and down. And sometimes, we're all human, and sometimes that roller coaster goes inside,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to not let it affect you as you're listening to something that's being reported to you. You can't let that dominate and just show all these emotions on your sleeve, wear your heart on your sleeve all the time and go back and forth and up and down and be out of control. You
Mm-hmm.
have to try to maintain control and then work through it.
Yeah. Yep.
More
Absolutely
logical,
agree.
not emotional, right?
Yeah. And that's not always, it's easier
easy.
said than done,
Oh,
but
yeah,
really
absolutely.
I think it just takes practice. So, so I really want to understand how you grew from 27 employees to 350, because that's just an extraordinary amount of growth. How much of that was from the recapitalization?
Not much from that side,
No?
because
Okay.
we've just done that 2.5
Just a couple years ago, yeah.
So, but we've continued that growth on that growth plane.
Okay.
But you have to have an intention.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a goal. And sometimes I will tell you, I mean, if you ask me for, a weakness of mine would be, I don't really enjoy sitting down and saying, okay, let me get my goals all together and let me make them in a smart format and,
Mhm.
map it all out and put timeframes on it. But it is necessary to have a goal of where you want the direction of the company to go.
Mm-hmm.
I did not grow this company. I grew people who in turn grew the company.
Mm-hmm.
And so by doing the right thing, we're just huge into the business ethics
Okay.
of how we treat people,
Mm-hmm.
doing the right thing. So that's when I say treat people, I mean customers, internal, vendors, owners. Everybody is treated fairly and in the context of their role in the organization. But everybody, the number one thing I did was, I think it's on me to set the culture of the company,
Mm-hmm.
because any organization will develop a culture.
Right. The question is, it
do
the
you want
right
it? Do you
culture?
want it your culture, or do you just want it to infiltrate from a lot of sources? And I just maintain that culture is key,
Mm-hmm.
and culture is top-down driven. And if you surround yourself with people that understand that and buy into that,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean they have to be all yes people for every other policy and every other thing that you're trying to get done. It means that the foundation of the company is the culture, and they agree with that culture,
Mm-hmm.
and they will do everything to support that culture.
So let's
Going
talk a
forward.
little bit about the practical aspect of a top-down driven culture, because I'm 100% with you. Every single organization has a culture. Oftentimes it's not the culture that has been intentionally created by the owner or the senior leadership team. But when you get to a company the size of 350 employees,
Mhm.
we're now talking about you must have different departments happening, right? You must,
Absolutely.
and so what I'm really interested in is, how do you, from a top-down perspective, maintain that kind of culture throughout the different pockets within the organization? Because you must have gone through those growing pains of
Absolutely.
starting to see, did you start to ever see silos show up or different cultures popping up because you had a strong leader? And I'm going to use the air quotes here, right? You get someone who's an influencer, but they happen to lean maybe more on the negative side. Tell us how did you handle that?
Yeah, so having seen what organizations that build silos look like, and I can't stand silos. I mean, you can drive it down to, I'll tell you the number one way that I've seen silos come up, and that's through the remuneration of people. So if we have multiple departments, and if we solely said your pay is based solely on your department's performance, end all be all, done. I've seen it to the point where, not in our organization, because I never let that occur in us, but in others that I've been in, I've seen where, I mean, if you could steal the copier code to put copies on that guy's account, not yours,
because it works better for your budget.
Better for your budget.
Right.
Yeah. So that's driven down. I mean, that's a culture, but that's driven way down deep. Everybody knows we save a penny everywhere we can. I don't lend you anything. And you really do form silos. And it's a competitive, like it's people that, there are leaders out there that want to see competition and they see it as good inside the company. And they go, no, we'll have some fun here and have the department heads sort of compete against each other. My definition is the competition is outside those walls. Yeah. We're one team inside. Yeah. So we're a team. There's your focus, is we do what we do better than everybody else. That's our goal.
And yet, do you have department-specific budgets that each department head is responsible for?
Yes.
Income and expense,
yes,
at least.
On the income side and the controllable expense side.
Okay.
But in our organization, what we don't do is we don't take our overhead and start dividing it out against departments.
You don't? Okay.
We do not, because they're not in control of that overhead.
Okay. So you sort of set that aside mentally.
That's aside,
that is what it is.
And they have targets that they're looking to try to achieve, efficiencies that they're trying to achieve. But always, always, we look at the big picture of, are we serving the customer first? So if a particular job or situation calls for multiple people from different departments to go solve that or work on that, you're all in. Nobody has possession of, this is my guy and he doesn't go anywhere but where I tell him to.
Got it.
So nobody has that. You all work, everybody works together. We're one team. Now, currently I'm CEO, but a lot of times when I introduce myself, I say I'm the CBR. And that's the Chief Broken Record.
I love it.
Okay. Chief Broken Record, because I repeat our values and our mission and our stance on things all the time, so that everybody hears it. Now, it's repeated in departmental meetings to all the staff. Everybody's incentivized to know that. They sign commitments that if they betray our core values, that's dismissible. They can't do that. And it's been so long now, right? I've been there 23 years and I've been that broken record over and over and over, and other people are now too, right? Yeah. But now it's peer-to-peer driven.
I was just going to ask, do they hold each other accountable?
Yes. That's how you know it's deep in the company. Right, or the organization, because now it's not a supervisor looking to find somebody that's not doing that. It's a peer going, gee, he's not upholding the values that got us here, so you need to talk to him. So people will watch out because they protect the brand, and really that's the brand, right? So that is how you're known and perceive that your brand and that your identity. So
and when you find the peers actually policing each other on your culture, that is when it's proof positive that the culture is really ingrained and that it's
Absolutely.
totally adopted and bought into. So
Correct.
I love
Correct.
it. All right. We could seriously have at least 3 different episodes with you. Your entree into the, entrepreneurial side of things.
Right.
The culture, of course, that's a whole podcast in and of itself. But then I want to move over next to some of the business side of it, the recapitalization,
Sure.
and then the succession planning too.
Right.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break here,
Okay.
and we're going to do a part 2 with Theo Etzel because it's really that good, and we've got more good stuff coming.
All right.
So Theo,
Happy to stick around.
thanks for joining us, and thanks for tuning in to the Evolve to Win show. We're going to give you more information on how to reach out to Theo Etzel. I want to make sure that you pick up a copy of his book, again, which is called Invest Your Heartbeats Wisely. And remember, connect with us on all of our social media channels as well. Share this if you loved it.